Hi, and welcome to Tina Talks Keto. I haven't made a video in a very long time, largely because of some health issues that I've been dealing with. So this video is going to talk a little bit about what's been going on, and then a little bit more about what I've been doing with following the keto way of life, way of eating, and potentially talking a little bit about some videos that I've seen from others that might be worth exploring. I'm recording this on Zoom as opposed to the software or the application that I had been using before. So I think you've got a little bit better picture. I take up more of the screen. Maybe that's good, maybe it's not. But anyway, this is what I'm going to try. And let me know in the comments whether you think it's a better platform. One thing that does happen, which hopefully I will be able to edit out, is that occasionally my internet connection freezes since this is being recorded up in the cloud. And again, as I said, I'm going to try to edit that out, and we'll see where it goes. I'm also not using a script. I did get several comments from previous videos that you all liked it better or liked videos better that were unscripted. So this is unscripted. Consequently, there'll probably be some mistakes, some things I maybe shouldn't say, or things that I maybe should edit out. We shall see. So let's historically go back. I know many of you watched the video about the 2 brain tumors that I have that I recorded with Dr. Cywes. That hasn't changed. But one of the reasons that we had gone through those brain MRIs and discovered those results was to see if we could figure out why my blood work was showing high calcium and high parathyroid hormone. And that goes back to about 2007, which is where this parathyroid stuff that I've had been going on started. So back in 2007, I had a kidney stone. Not a pleasant experience at all. So one of the things that the doctors wanted to look for was why. Why does somebody all of a sudden develop kidney stones? And in my case, it was because my calcium in my blood was too high, and my parathyroid hormone was also too high. And when you have those two blood results together, so typically when you have a blood work where you have blood work drawn and you have results that show high calcium and high parathyroid hormone, that means that you have a parathyroid adenoma or a parathyroid tumor. And I, of course, at that point, since high calcium in one's blood is not good at all, it tends to lead to osteoporosis and also kidney stones. That's something that really needs to get taken care of. So I went through all the testing, had an ear, nose, and throat doc who found there's a scan called the sestamibi scan. He found the tumor on the sestamibi scan. And in 2008, I scheduled the surgery, had the parathyroid adenoma removed, and my calcium blood levels went down back to normal levels. Parathyroid hormone also went back down to normal levels. And really, I thought I was all done with it. It wasn't a really complicated surgery. It was relatively easy to recover from. I had a tiny little scar in the middle of my neck. Years and years and years ago, they used to do a really big lopping scar across one's whole neck to go into the parathyroid, and that, fortunately, those surgeries are no longer done, and it's a very small pinpoint type of operation to get rid of the parathyroid adenoma. So on we go. And fast forward to about 2016, I had another kidney stone. And it's like, wait a minute. Now, they do say that for people who have kidney stones, the chances of one's getting a second kidney stone sometime in the next 10 years is pretty common. So you have to question, all right, so I got another kidney stone. What does that mean? Well, guess what? They got my blood work back, high calcium, high parathyroid. Now, it's extremely rare for somebody who has initial parathyroid surgery with an adenoma that's found to actually find a second adenoma. But that's what they found. Went through the same testing, the same ultrasounds, the same cystoscopy scans, and it looked like, or the scans seemed to show that there was a second parathyroid adenoma. We all have 4 parathyroid glands, 1 thyroid gland, 4 parathyroid glands. The parathyroid glands sit on the thyroid gland, just slightly in front of it. As I'm going to post a picture of what that looks like. So back to now deciding, well, what do we do about this? Now, one of the differences between the first surgery and the second surgery is there's a lot of scar tissue in one's neck after the first surgery, and it's a much more complex surgery to have. I went back to the same ear, nose, and throat doc that did the first surgery back in 2008. This is 8 years later, and he is no longer doing those types of surgeries. He's gone on to a different level, different career, actually exploring blue light of all the things that one might want to change one's career to. But anyway, I went to see him. He doesn't do it anymore. End of story. Didn't have any references, and off we go. So I decided to ask various friends, and I ended up going to a surgeon in Manhattan, in New York City, which is about a 2.5 hour, almost 3 hour drive from where I live. And I found a surgeon that was very well known and world renowned in surgeries that he does. And this will become relevant in a little bit. So into New York City, had that surgery. He took out what he told me was 2 more parathyroid glands. So now I'm left with 1. Now, you theoretically cannot live without any parathyroid glands because your parathyroid is what regulates calcium in your body. That's its biggest claim to fame, so to speak. So now I have 1 left, which is fine. Or at least I think I have 1 left. And off we go. Again, blood work came back, calcium dropped down to normal levels, parathyroid hormone dropped back down to normal levels. Surgery was, I think, in 2017. And I think I'm fine. Well, 2020 rolls around. Now we're only a few years later. And there's some questions to be asked about why levels in calcium went down and levels in the parathyroid hormone went down from that surgery, because in 2020, they went back up, clearly indicating that I still had another parathyroid tumor. Now, this is, in my brain, the last parathyroid gland I have. So now it becomes more concerning. Because how do you remove the last parathyroid gland? If you then don't have a parathyroid gland, then you're not controlling calcium, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So to make a long story short, I found another surgeon, much more local to me, but also very highly recommended. And he did some scans. That's where I had the brain MRI came from, what my conversations with Dr. Cywes, talking about one of the things that happened. Left out this part. Let me not leave out this part. In 2020, with the high levels of calcium and the high parathyroid gland, I also looked to see where and who was the best candidates for doing the surgery on me. And there is a major group that does only parathyroid surgery out of Tampa. And I went through the whole process of sending all of my various medical records down to them, and they agreed that they would do the surgery for me. And that was scheduled in May of 2021. Right in the middle of COVID, by the way, this was all happening, which was just delightful because it made, it was harder to get appointments, harder to get scans. There was times where New York had shut everything down. and you couldn't get appointments. So it wasn't the best time in the world to end up with this problem again. So I go down to Tampa, planning on having the surgery, and that group, the parathyroid group, ran scans when I got there. Now, I didn't get preliminary scans the way I had before the previous two surgeries. The parathyroid group down in Tampa just does the scans when you get there. So then they do an ultrasound, they do a sestamibi scan to see the next adenoma. And so I went there, we took the trip down to Tampa. We were going down to Florida anyway, so we kind of combined that into a bigger trip. But anyhow, go there, check in, do all the preliminary blood work and everything else, and go for the scans. And I'm sitting there ready to go into the operating room, and the doctor comes in, the surgeon comes in. So I'm getting the surgeon comes in, I'm all ready to go for the surgery, and he says, we don't see the adenoma on the sestamibi scan. We don't see it on the ultrasound. We don't recommend that we do the surgery because we don't know where to look. Well, when you hear that from the world-renowned group for parathyroid surgery telling you we don't recommend that you do the surgery, you don't do the surgery. So kind of disappointing, because now I still have high blood work, high calcium, I have high parathyroid, I don't feel great, and that's another thing that we'll talk about in a little bit. So now what? So interestingly, I had been seeing, and I think you know this from previous videos of mine, Dr. Cywes for the keto diet and weight loss. And I actually had a few days later after this, because we're heading into his neck of the woods. We were on the west side of Florida. Now we're driving over to the east side of Florida. And I went to see him in person. So we went over all of my various labs and blood work and had a very, very excellent meeting. But I talked to him about this parathyroid problem. And he had said, well, let's think about what other tests you might want to get. And, oh, by the way, if you let me do it, and I also asked him, do you actually do this? Because it didn't seem to be his level of expertise to me. But yes, he does them. He is a general surgeon, in addition to being a bariatric surgeon, in addition to being an excellent mentor for the keto diet. And he said, well, we go into your throat, we take out whatever parathyroid is left, and we auto-transplant it into your arm. And the reason they do that is that we're really not supposed to live without a parathyroid gland. So they look at it, they take a piece of what looks like the tumor away, and then they retransplant some healthy gland. And then theoretically, it starts working again, even though it's not in your neck anymore, it's in your arm somewhere, and all is good. So that was his recommendation. He ordered the brain MRI and another sestamibi scan. And from those results, the brain MRI showed the two tumors that I have in my brain, which was quite surprising. Now, the reason he ordered a brain MRI is the pituitary gland can also stimulate a parathyroid gland in terms of false high numbers or high numbers in your blood work of both the calcium and the parathyroid hormone. So I came back with a very tiny tumor in the pituitary gland and a larger tumor in the cerebellum. Okay, so those were the results from the brain MRI, which now we're into 2022 in November. So May of 21 was when the Tampa people said, nope, we're not going to do that. We're not going to have this surgery. And it's all the way until November of 22. Yeah, November of 22 that I had the brain MRI. It was 8 months ago, whatever time frame that is, because I had to look for another appointment that I was making. But anyhow, the second sestamibi scan that we didn't show anything again for the parathyroid tumor. So I called a neurosurgeon because that seemed to me, since it's a brain thing, the person to talk to. He looked at the scans and he said, you have to go see an endocrinologist before we do anything with the tumors in your brain. So I went to see an endocrinologist who ordered something called a 4D scan, which is a more in-depth scan looking at the neck. And lo and behold, those results came out positive for the parathyroid adenoma. It's there. They found it. So he recommended a surgeon. And with all the scheduling and everything like that, I saw the surgeon sometime in March, and then and this surgeon came very well recommended from the group and close to home at Stony Brook Hospital, which has a very good reputation. I was long past going to see a specialist, since the specialist in the city anyway, the world-renowned guy for all things ear, nose, and throat. And I scheduled the surgery for the 26th of June. Now, as all along the way here, what's happening is I'm starting to feel, and you remember from I don't remember, I haven't looked to see when the last time was that I posted a video, but my enjoyment of life, let's say, started to get pretty poor. Exhausted all the time, really didn't want to do much of anything. It was kind of like, let's just get through the day and we'll see what tomorrow brings, but no energy. And this sort of got worse and worse and worse. But it's a very common set of symptoms for people with parathyroid adenomas. So along comes the surgery, and the after surgery report, talked to the surgeon, or my husband talked to the surgeon. I have since talked to the surgeon, but in the beginning, after I got out of surgery, my husband learned everything and remembered most of what he said, not all of what he said. But anyway, he took out that parathyroid adenoma. So now I have 0, according to him, parathyroid glands. Now, what's interesting is he read all the reports from the surgery the second time around, and there was no pathology. I never saw the pathology report, but apparently when all of the tissue that the second surgeon took out back in 2018 went to the pathologist for testing, there was no parathyroid gland tissue in all of the samples. So that surgeon actually never removed any other parathyroid. The tumor was still, whatever tumor we thought we had back then was still there. Didn't take any of it out, which is why it came back so fast. So we think that the reason that the calcium numbers dropped for a while and the parathyroid hormone went down for a while is just that all of that surgery and banging around in there and cutting things up just stopped the parathyroid glands from working for a while, which is why we had reasonable blood work results for a year and a half or so before everything started to come back. So he was adamant, my third surgeon was absolutely adamant that nothing had taken place that was positive from the second surgery, despite the fact that this guy was the world-renowned surgeon for doing this kind of stuff, other than the group down in Tampa, which probably would have been the better group to go to, but that's not the group I went to for the second one. So this third surgery, he took everything out, including my thyroid. And then he auto-transplanted one piece of one parathyroid gland back in my throat, hoping that it would start to produce parathyroid hormone, because you need parathyroid hormone to regulate calcium in your blood and in your blood. And it's much better to have the actual gland that's supposed to do that regulate the calcium than it is to not have any parathyroid glands. So we went from a situation where I had too much calcium in my blood, and that's why we're doing the surgery, to get rid of the adenoma that was causing the problem, which we did. And the pathology report came back positive for parathyroid adenoma for a clinically unstable, or however you want to call it. But definitely they took out the offending gland. And they also took out the thyroid. Now, the picture that I showed earlier, which I'll put up again here, you can see how difficult it would be to remove all of the parathyroid without removing any of the remaining thyroid. Now, the first surgery that I had way back in 2008 took out half of my thyroid gland, and it was on the same side as the parathyroid tumor. So we took that out because that showed nodules, and they just wanted to make absolutely certain that there was no cancer or any other problems with my thyroid. So they took out half the thyroid. This time around, the third surgeon took out the rest of the other half. So now I have no thyroid gland. So now, although I was taking a reasonable amount of Synthroid or levothyroxine, which is the generic version, the generic form of Synthroid, to establish good thyroid levels in my blood and in my body. Now we have no thyroid gland and no medication at the time to, right after the surgery, to bring up my body correctly to the proper thyroid levels now that I had no thyroid. So not only did I not have any thyroid, I didn't have thyroid medication either. I don't think. Maybe I did. But anyway, I'm in the hospital for 3 days. Surgery is healing well. I'm struggling to talk. One of the things that happens with a lot of scar tissue in there, now there's even more scar tissue. So the third surgeon had to go through scar tissue from the first guy and scar tissue from the second guy, and created his own, of course, on top of that. So I'm now having trouble with swallowing. And for the first 3 or 4 weeks after the surgery, I want to say I had trouble talking. I was hoarse. Now, he didn't hit any vocal cords. There was some concern that he might hit vocal cords. But he said, if I do, it's only going to be one, because I'm only going to be on one side of your throat. The other side's completely empty anyway. That was what the other guy did. He took out everything on the left. So there's only stuff left on the right. And so I was hoarse. I had trouble talking. I still have some trouble. I don't have trouble talking, but I have trouble swallowing. And that may stay with me for the rest of my life. Who knows? But anyway, that's pretty much where I'm at now. Now, slowly over the past 6 to 8 weeks, I've started to feel better. The lack of interest in doing anything, the total exhaustion, not being able to swallow is getting better. I have more interest in life. I've been out walking, trying to enjoy the remainder of the summer, and slowly but surely been getting better, which brings me up to date, essentially, and fortunately starting to feel quite well. I started to feel quite well maybe 3 weeks ago, and I started to think about doing another video. And then it was like, well, you better get a haircut before you do another video. So procrastination, big time. Oh, you can do a video now. You've got a couple of hours. And then I'd look at what I was wearing, and it was my pajamas. And it was like, well, no, we're not going to do a video. Finally, I think I got some friends of mine who've kind of asked why I hadn't done any more, and realized that I really should. And then I hear Dr. Berry talking about how it's important, because if I can bring any knowledge and start anybody else in this path of following the proper human diet and all that kind of stuff, it's better. That's why I started making these videos to begin with, to try to help anybody that wanted to listen, to help them along with following this way of eating. I have been, with few exceptions, actually very good about following the keto way of eating. The hospital was a big hiccup. Since I couldn't eat any solid food, I was on liquids only. There was really not a whole lot other than broth that I really could eat. And yes, if I was just there for like 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, and then released, but I was there for a few days. Um, One of the things they want to make sure of is that your magnesium levels are back up, calcium levels start to stabilize, and they're not going to let you out until all of those blood work numbers sort of fall in line to where they're supposed to be. Especially since I had no thyroid anymore and no parathyroid glands. We were also watching to see if one of the parathyroid glands the one he did auto transplant, would actually kick back in. Excuse me. And at this point, it has not. Um, so one of the parathyroids needed to kick back in. It hasn't kicked back in. So I'm on taking calcium every day. I get blood work done every week. Um, and we're just sort of moving along, uh, kind of at a snail's pace. It seems like it's just taking forever for things to come back. But it is coming back very slowly. I am starting to feel better. I was out walking yesterday, and this runner came by and passed me, and she had a T-shirt that said "Focus," and then underneath it said "Get it done," and that kind of resonated with me. I know I'd been stalling. I did definitely want to start the videos up again, keep talking about the keto diet, keep talking about how I'm doing. I think my future videos are probably going to be a combination of how I'm doing health wise, in addition to how I'm doing food wise. They do kind of blend together. So anyway, so at the hospital, I was on full carbs. As soon as I got home, I went straight back and full carbs were kind of enjoyable soups, cream-based soups, and ice cream, jellos, um, and then very slowly into some more solid food. But I really, in the hospital anyway, really couldn't swallow. So it took a while to get out of the hospital and back into a while, being a day or two, where I could find food that followed keto successfully and was also fairly easy to swallow. Um, so meats with more fat made them easier to be slippery and slide down, have more gravies, things like that. But basically back into the full keto way of eating. Now, I should reiterate that my keto way of eating is largely carnivore, with a few veggies here and there. I will have some tomatoes. I will have tomato mozzarella salad. I do eat cheese. I eat kind of, Caesar salads. I'll eat garden salads. I'll eat cucumbers. Um, but not anything major in terms of having a large amount of veggies and not so much meat. For the most part, I eat heavy meat, um, and then veggies to taste if they're being served. Um, I also don't eat the high fat version of keto because my body can't handle it. And along with all of this thyroid stuff, parathyroid stuff that was going on, I ended up in the end of April, with some kind of stomach bug that made life really challenging for quite a number of weeks. Um, let's just suffice it to say that I needed to be near a bathroom most of the time. That has sort of gotten better. Still not fixed, still seeing gastroenterologists all the time. So not only was I struggling with the the parathyroid and all the blood work and everything that was bad and that was causing me to have all sorts of difficulty with energy and things to do and wanting to do anything at all, and top that off with, well, I'm just going to stay home because I can't leave the house. None of that was very pleasant, and slowly getting better. So where I'm at now, um, I'm heading on vacation next week. Uh, Planning on staying fully, well, it's close to I guess you would call it ketovore, since I do throw in a few things that aren't pure carnivore. Um, I was saying I keep a lower fat version. That's part of the problem that I have digestive wise, which I've had ever since I started this plan. My body just does not like fat. So the easiest way to have high ketones and to stick to this diet and to feel satiated is to use a significant amount of fat along with your food so that you feel satiated at the end of the day. Gets your ketones higher and generally gives you more energy and feeling better. And that's not something that I've been able to do. So I keep my fats lower. I eat more lean meat, chicken breast, as opposed and leaner fish, and not so much ribeyes and very little butter, as much as I love it. And I do put heavy cream in my coffee, though I've been trying to cut that back. So that's essentially where I'm at today. I will make videos going forward, some more, and I hope that you guys will follow me, will subscribe, and like video. That would be really awesome. I would like to grow my channel. And I realize, of course, that not making videos does not serve that purpose in any way, shape, or form. And I've probably lost half of you by the time I started to record this. But I hope that gives you some insight into what's been going on, some insight into what it's like to have a parathyroid adenoma, what it's like to pick surgeons and how do you go about it, that kind of stuff. If anybody has any questions or wants to continue the chat, please write comments down below in the video. I guess I do have to get into the disclaimer. I am not a doctor. All of my advice relates to me and me alone. And if you want to try anything that I do in terms of the keto way of life, way of eating, best to ask your physician first. And I guess that's it. So thank you for, if you've stuck along this long, thank you for listening. And I will catch you in the next week or two. Everybody take care.